might be wondering what this giant red ship is, and it is the Santissima Trinidad. And this is what is called Trafalgar mode in naval action. Basically, it's larger ships from the surprise up in what has to be a 10v10 or more. So there's been some that have been 30 people, 40 people, and they're pretty fun. This is a bit of a smaller one, but basically it's just a little update on the game and the direction it's going and how it's going. Basically, as you can see in this fight, there's a lot of ship of the lines, and one of the valid tactics in this Trafalgar mode is basically just to charge. Because when you get up close, the damage, increases a lot, your penetration goes up a lot, you can, 3 first rates can basically one-shot another first rate, as you're about to see. And frigates don't really stand a chance up close against big ships, so they tend to fight, more upwind, try and dodge out of the way. You see a lot of new players though in frigates getting in the way of line ships, getting, one-shot sunk, getting destroyed, or, ramming into their teammates and stuff. And I guess it's to be expected with, a lot of people who've never played these kind of games, but you're about to see here that Airborne's not going to last too long in this fight. Once you get up close, a broadside like this will pretty much take him to half armor, knock out a few things, damage his pump. And that was a pretty shitty broadside by me, but it doesn't really matter, I was just going across it. So where's the game headed? The game right now is basically going to be changed, whereas the devs are not going to work on combat anymore so much. They're going to be focused on the open world prototype. And that prototype, from what we know, is going to be in the Caribbean. And the first testing that's going to happen is going to be travel times, the sailing, just if the open world works, basically, right? Are the sail times too long? Are they too short? Is there, drastic bugs? And the combat system is still going to be there, like the arena fights, all that. That's going to be kind of like a standalone part of the game while the game's in development. But they won't be changing, too much. They won't, like the damage model, there's a new damage model coming out. It's going to be basically the final iteration of it. It's going to have, a few tweaks and changes, obviously, as the game progresses, but, we're getting to the point where combat's pretty solid, and now the rest of the game needs to take shape. And, they're going to add some new ships. There's going to be a new second rate. There's going to be a new fourth rate. A new frigate that's, in the works. The Ingleman, I think I'm saying that right. And they're trying to vote right now for a second rate that they should make and model. And there's some smaller ships that are, getting some attention, and people want to see some sloops, some cutters, some corvettes. Stuff to fill out, the ranks of the ships that are already in the game. But on that note, there are a lot of people in the game right now that are, they're just farming damage, they're playing, they're loving it, but they have expectations for the open world, and they might be very grandiose expectations. And one of the first things the devs said, when they opened the forums, well, you can see Airborne's pretty much dead now. 3-4 broadsides from Santissima's at close range, and a victory's gonna just fall over. But what the devs said was, keep your expectations low. This isn't some massive project that's nearing completion. This is very early. Not a big dev team. You gotta be realistic, right? And there's a lot of people that are asking for the world. They want, all these unique systems and, really great ideas. I gotta give it to them. Like, amazing ideas that, if they could be done, it would be awesome. Some of these systems, like escort systems, you have to sail with the person. Other systems, admiralty systems. And, in theory and in, they sound great. You can see another broadside there, fell red. Pretty low from just one shot. Because once you get into half armor, your armor basically does nothing anymore, and you can just penetrate straight through it, so he'll be down soon too. But basically, the armor and values are good, but people will, they want these massive systems, and, I think people need to realize and take a step back and say, okay, let's look at the game. It's looking great so far, but let's not expect, ridiculous things. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but the escort system is a good example. What the argument is right now is that there's either going to be a system where you get teleported in, right? When you're escorting someone, they get attacked, you get teleported in from wherever you are in the world, and you help them. And, that's kind of the base of the idea. You pay for an escort, the escort comes and helps you, everybody gets paid, everybody's happy. And people have come up with the idea that you should sail with the person you're escorting, which in theory is a cool idea. It adds to the immersion, it adds to the kind of, I guess, the risk and the feeling and all that. But at the same time, you got to look at it as an online game, and you're not really choosing the escort from what we know so far. It's kind of like a queue system. It's like you queued up, the battle starts, and you get into it. So the people have come up with the idea that you sail with them, which is cool. I would like to see that, but it's an online game. People are going to DC, people are going to, AFK, they're going to fuck off to their fridge and get dinner and, walk away. Who cares? They're gone. And if you're sailing with someone for, people have said they want the map to be big. 2-hour sails, hour sails, not short distances. If you're stuck to the hip with someone for 2 hours and they're zigzagging or they're going slow or they're trolling you because they don't like you and you happen to be the escort, right? That could end up pretty shitty. And I guess it's one of those things where if it was a single player game, great idea. But it's multiplayer. You have to deal with the masses. You have to deal with shitheads. You got to deal with internet issues, right? And you can't have these beautiful systems, sadly, when it's going to be more of a pain in the ass probably than it'll be a good system. The fear is, of course, that you get a troll or you get some shit and someone DCs, and then the game has to decide, okay, your escort just DC'd, right? His internet went out, his power went out, who knows, it's stormy, right? Now the game has to decide, okay, he's gone, now what do we do with you? Your escort's gone. Do we teleport someone in now? Well, then that breaks the whole point of sailing with the escort. Or, do you get paid? Do you get teleported back to port? Does the escort get teleported back to port if the merchantman decides to fuck off and sail somewhere else? Are we going to control the ships on the open sea? Are we going to be able to turn and say, I want to go here, can I turn and do like a loop-de-loop? Or is it going to be like, I pick a route, like, Havana to Florida, and I'm stuck on that route. I can't turn, I can't control it. Because that's kind of the defining factor, because there's tons of room for trolling and, asshole moves, and you get escorted by someone you really hate, and you're just going to sail around in circles and piss them off. It's like, that could be an issue. It's an online game, online community. You don't know who you're going to get. The community right now is amazing in the game. The forums are a lovely place. Most people in the game are nice. Everybody's happy and chill. But when this game goes live, it's going to be a bigger audience. It's going to be on Steam. That means there's going to be a lot of people looking at it, maybe a lot of people buying it. And you're not going to be able to, control these people. They're going to be doing what they want, when they want, how they want. And if they want to troll you, if they want to leave, if they want to sail in a circle, they can do that. If they want to AFK because there's a movie on that they want to watch, they're going to do that. So that's one of the systems that the devs are probably going to have to figure out and probably just compromise on and say, look, it's not realistic, but we're going to teleport you in because it makes sense as a game mechanic. And this is what I'm talking about by frigates here. If they get in the way of a line ship, you can pretty much, one or two shot them. As long as you hit, your decks are reloaded. They don't turn. That's a big tip if you're in a frigate and you see a ship of the line ranging you, Santisima, Victory, Bologna, and you see their shots hitting you like their spacebar taps, crank your sails hard right or hard left, jam that rudder and just fucking turn, because you can dodge a lot of shots a lot of the time. Especially if you're in a surprise or Trincolami. It's a great way to avoid being damaged straight up, because once those line ships fire, there's a delay where the bullet has to travel. And, if you're turning, they're going to miss maybe not all the shots, but half of them, half the broadside, maybe more. Don't just sail straight and take the shot. That's a mistake that you see a lot of people making. So that's where the game stands right now. It's going into open world prototyping. It's, looking pretty good. Community's really good so far. There's, a few people that are outliers and, making noise for the sake of making noise, but you can only deal with them because it's an online game. The repair system is being questioned, of course, and there's, two sides. There's the people who don't want any repairs. There's people who want tons of repairs. There's people who want, this crew to shut down when you repair and have unlimited supplies or have to buy supplies. There's so much theory crafting right now. It's almost like theory crafting is good, obviously. You need it. You need people to put input in. There's some great ideas. There's some bad ideas. All that. But it seems almost too early for that because we don't have an idea of what the devs are going to do. We don't know, what their plans are, and like you can't theory craft around an unknown engine, an unknown. Well, we know the engine's Unity, but an unknown structure, an unknown plan, right? Because the devs obviously have a plan in their heads that they're going to do, and a lot of the theory crafting is instantly obsolete because it's not in those plans. It's not feasible. It's not, practical. It's not what the devs want, whatever reason. So, it would be awesome if people would just hold back on the theory crafting a little bit, just a little bit, until we get more information, right? Until we see how the open world functions, until we see how, progression is going to function, until we see all these things. It's hard to theory craft, and, people are getting into pretty big arguments, not like mean arguments, but back and forth, good points on both sides, and from an outside view, you kind of look at it and go, this all means nothing, because we don't know what the game's going to be like. So why are you, fighting, not mean or anything, but just fighting over a topic that we don't know? Like, it could go really well, it could go really bad. You're talking about systems that a lot of the times haven't even been started by the devs, coding-wise. Like, there's no information given on the repair system yet because I don't think the devs really know yet. But people are theory crafting over it and, making polls, and it's all good, but, just slow down. Look where you are in the game. It took a year, almost a year and a half to go from we have ships on the open sea to alpha trials, which are basically just battles, so it's not the fastest progression ever. So when people are theory crafting about end game, admiralty control, and these crazy systems, you gotta slow down. Don't get your hype up. But you gotta be hyped about the game. It's looking great. It's sounding great. But don't envision a game that you have theory crafted and then get disappointed when that game doesn't come true, because that's the worst thing you can do. I think it's better to go in with an open mind, theory craft a little bit about what the devs have given you information-wise, but don't go making up new systems that haven't been mentioned. A good example is the exploration system. That there's been a lot of information about that. There's a dev post with, kind of strict guidelines, like here's how it's going to work. People can theory craft that, but no one has, really. People have just been worried about, admiralty and who's going to control the admiralty, and, player standing, and these weird things that are like, they're so far down the road that it just doesn't make sense to even talk about them. Because, a dev might come along and say, by the way, that's not how it's going to work. And then there's your, 6-page thread full of good ideas down the drain. Because you didn't wait. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but that's how I would see it. You can't theory craft what isn't known. And that's just the sad way it is. So this Trafalgar is pretty slow. I mean, it's a smaller battle. I kind of sailed away. Wasn't really paying attention. But our frigates, destroyed a lot of their frigates, and one of their Santissimas turned around. That's one thing you shouldn't do. If you're in a big ship, Santissima, Victory, your best bet is to stay with your other Santissimas and Victories and Bellonas, because, your fire to power together is so much better than if you're alone. A lot of the time, the repairs are so fast that you shoot somebody, by the time you fully reload, they've repaired what you've done. Waste one of their 3 repairs, yeah. But if you're by yourself as a line ship, you're not really doing what you should be doing. You should be with your friends, because as you saw earlier, we basically shot that Variborn and Dom, I think his name was, and he didn't even have a chance to use the repairs because we basically shot him down to 0. He tried to repair, we kept him at 0, and he sunk before his repairs could do anything. And that's really the best way to go about sinking line ships, is to just focus them, and people don't do that. They could have sunk one of us there earlier in the battle, but they didn't. They didn't focus us, and we all survived. So, keep that in mind. And if you're in a frigate, kill their other frigates first. There's a reason that your guns don't really do much to a first rate. It's because you shouldn't really be shooting them unless you're in the opportune position. You should really be, trying to sink their other frigates first, help your line ships when they need it, and then if you're in a good spot, open up a broadside on that Santissima. Do it. Don't hold your guns by any means, but focus on their frigates and supporting your big ships, because you can get one shot by a Santissima or a Victory if you're not careful, and you're also a lot of times just in the way. You might block a first rate from shooting, and that's pretty bad. And this is kind of a funny broadside. You can see he's not sinking. I hit him a few times, kind of a shitty shot. I'm downwind, so I can't elevate my guns anymore. But if you notice, his pump is now red, I'm pretty sure, because he sinks in the next, 2 seconds. But, you gotta be smart in these battles, and a lot of people are complaining that they can't get enough damage, and, the damage system isn't really fair and all this, but, I take Constitutions and Trincolamies and all sorts of ships to Trafalgar battles, and I often outdamage first rates in my Constitution, just because it's not because I'm shooting nothing or I'm shooting more. I'm just going after the targets that I know I can sink easily. And then when I see a first rate that's got no armor or half armor, I go, oh look, my guns can now penetrate that target. I'm gonna go over there and sink it. Simple as that, right? And that's what it comes down to in this game. There's a lot of people that still don't, know how it works. They don't understand the penetration. They're just out there having fun shooting. That's great. But, if you want tips, that's what you gotta do. If you're in that frigate, like that little surprise in front of me there, he's doing the worst thing. He's sailing in a straight line, just letting me shoot him. And he's not even trying to turn or evade or dodge a shot, I mean, yeah, the battle's over, but he could have turned a hard left there as soon as I ranged him, and I would have hit his stern, which currently does no damage in the game, really, once it's already blown out. And I would have missed a lot of shots, because the spread is still pretty big. And I didn't tap every single shot, I just fired, because it's basically over. But now, look, he just shot way over my head, so... And then there's this guy, same thing. I'm ranging him, he could be turning out right now, but he's sitting at battle sails, and just letting me shoot him, and he's dead too. Yeah, the battle's over, but if he was at full health, he probably would have done the same, because most people do that. So, that's the biggest tips, is you're in a frigate, you see a line ship, avoid it. You see a hurt line ship, go for the kill. He's got half armor, your guns now penetrate fully, so get in there and go hit him. But at the start of the battle, you should be looking for their frigates, looking for your opportune shots. As soon as you see a line ship that gets, to the point where you can penetrate, jump on them. Go sink them. That's the biggest thing. If you kill their first rates in this game mode, it's basically over if your first rates survive. Because, first rates are so powerful that the only thing that counters them is other first rates. And that's all you have to do. So as this battle winds down, you'll see the damage after, and... there's always surprising numbers. You'll see people in, Trincolamies out-damaging Bolognas, and Constitutions that out-damage first rates, and I think a lot of people still don't get the aiming system. There's been complaints about it, and oh, it's too hard, or oh, it's too easy, but it's one of those things that it's easy to learn. Well, not quite easy to learn, but once you learn it, it makes a lot of sense. It's simple. but it's hard to master when you're moving, when you're in a small boat, When you're trying to shoot a first rate, it's easy. They're so big, you could shoot anywhere and hit them, basically. But when you're trying to hit a snow in a storm in a first rate, it's, nigh on impossible a lot of the time. And, that's a great balance, I would say. But, people have arguments about this and that, of course, so who really knows? What else is new in the game? The new combat or damage model's coming. It's going to be basically more realistic. There's going to be more penetration values. If your shot goes through a gun port, it'll go straight through that gun port and it'll hit, on the other side of the ship. It could go straight through the ship. There's going to be better water taking on values. I said that terribly, but water's not going to come in from the top deck. Because currently if you get shot in the top deck, only the very top of your ship, if you see on the Centisma that top row of guns, in theory if you only get shot there, you'll still spring leaks for some reason. It doesn't really make sense. That's just the current damage model. There's going to be a lot less sinking and a lot more capturing, surrendering. Fire is going to be implemented, so basically it'll be another indicator on the compass to the bottom left of the screen that'll say, oh, you're on fire, and you have to switch your crew to either survival or another mode, probably just survival, to put that fire out. It'll be like taking on water, but it'll add that extra little dimension and a cool visual effect. And if you don't take out the fire, you'll either get burned down or blow up in a massive explosion, which is coming apparently quite soon. And that's about it. That's new with the game. Not much has changed because the devs are working in the open world. But when that hits, there'll be a lot more people in the game. It'll be considered early access, I guess. True early access. And, hopefully it works out. The nations are going to be Portugal, Spain, France, England, Dutch, and pirates, but that's basically just players who go rogue. Pirates aren't going to be an actual nation. They're going to be just people who don't want to play with a nation, and they're probably going to get sunk a lot, but I bet that a lot of the pirates will be the better players in the game, and they'll have easy pickings for at least the first while after the game goes live, in quotation marks, whenever that may be. There's no stated release date. A lot of people say late 2015, but I think that's pretty optimistic, considering it took from summer 2013, when it was kind of announced, a little bit earlier than that, to now, so a year and a half or more, to go from here's some screenshots of our game to you can play this game. That's obviously a big achievement, but if you just take that timeline and now think that they have to develop an entire open world, mechanic and all this other stuff, and add more ships, and add, crews and boarding and more animations, and, musket men that are going to be on the ships, Marines. They're going to add, more types of guns, mortars, brigs, forts, everything. That's probably going to take more than a year, or less than a year now. People are pretty optimistic with that late 2015. I wouldn't be surprised if it was late 2016, just based on the sole, just the way the game has progressed, really. That's basically it. It's, not slow by any means, but it's not fast. You remember, it's only 6 guys, or 7 guys, I'm not sure if they added someone. And, they've done a great job so far, but you gotta give them time. And you gotta respect their vision of the game. And that's, where all these theory crafting and forum arguments, all that comes into play. But it's looking up right now. It's definitely fun. These Trafalgar battles are a lot of fun. The time flies. It kind of reminds me of, Pirates of the Burning Sea, or, other games that are really kind of have that addictive quality where you start a battle and you kind of play the battle, you look at the clock, and it's like, oh shit, half an hour's gone by. You don't even notice it. It's kind of like League of Legends in that sense, where the games, they're 45-minute games, but they go by really quick. So that's a good sign, you know. It keeps you wanting to come back. Every battle's different. People are really good, you know. Community's great. You can see in the chat in this battle, a lot of people were talking and organizing and focusing targets. You know, that's the way you want it to be. The chat window needs some work. I mean, I don't know why it's taking them so long to fix that. It shouldn't be that hard of a fix, I'd imagine, but, you know, it's Unity. It's not really built for MMOs. There's never been an MMO in Unity, so that's kind of a sketchy thing. We'll see how that works out. But you can see this is another example of a first-rate shooting a frigate. This guy's DC, so he's still in the game too. Basically one broadside with, you know, not too many missed shots, and he's basically sunk. So I guess that's one of the balance issues with the game right now, is that, you know, smaller ships don't stand a chance against bigger ships, but it's realistic, but at the same time it's not. I mean, it's good in this situation, but hopefully the final game has some maybe semi-balanced battles to make this, you know, less of an issue. But it is realistic, so you can't really do much about it. Bigger guns are gonna, you know, sink smaller ships. You can see that people sink pretty fast if you just watch how fast this guy goes under, with no repairs, no pumping, obviously, because it's DC. But you know, I'd be surprised if a ship could sink that fast from hitting the top deck of it. But that's something that's going to change. It's really just a you know, an alpha testing death mechanic that doesn't really have any pertinence to the final game, as far as we know. And then we'll see the damage, and that'll be it. I don't know, I think probably second place in damage. I kind of sailed away for a bit, didn't really give a shit. I was just looking at my phone. Yeah, second place in damage. That's not too bad. I mean, you can see there are a lot of mismatched scores, like a victory with 7,000, Constitution with 11,000. I mean, that's the other thing. You gotta survive to do damage. So, that's the end of that.